Just a quick walkthrough of setting up the Unreal Engine template. So just be in Epic Games, and you'll you download the latest version. It's not really going to change anything, but I've got 5.2 updated today. I've got Figgle Testes already set up, but I'll show you how I did that and let it load. You'll need Visual Studio as well, because that's going to do the code. It kind of matters that you start with a blank project that's set up to produce the C++, because even if you do the visual scripting, like I do the visual scripting, you're not going to want to lock yourself into visual scripting. You're going to want to be able to do plugins that are C++ and do more nuanced things down the line. So even though there is the top-down that you could build right from, we'll add that in later. So just start blank C++, and we'll make this one my project, and then I'll be switching back to Figgle Testes because I've already got that set up. Um, this takes a second. I'm not going to actually make it build the Visual Studio, though it should automatically launch Visual Studio for me when it finishes creating the project. I'll give it a second to do that. You'll see if it's got several templates that can be nice to work with. I've worked primarily with the first person and third person vehicle just for dicking around with some things. And then VR, of course, because Cal and I were building VR type things. It's booting in the background, but I'll go ahead and pull Visual Studio up because that'll speed things up a little bit. It might even pull up we just pull up the Figgle Testes one. So you don't really need to worry about what is going on in here. You just need to have it produce the code. So it should boot this. Again, this should boot in a second for the other one that I just made. But you'll just right click on this and build the solution. It shouldn't take much time at all. It'll just try building it, and then it'll tell you whether it was successful. This is just to get the underlying C++ templates set up. Yeah, see here it's building the one that I just set up for my project. Let me get the other one back to the front. So you see, succeeded the build. So great, we can close that. And then what actually matters for it is we're going to go into, I think it's documents. Hang on, let me close this my project one because we don't want that. I think it's my documents where Epic Games saves its crap. Program files, Epic Games. No, that's the launcher. Let me see where these files are located. Okay, so it is going to be documents, Unreal projects, and then you'll find your Unreal project. So these are the ones that I've made in the past. I should be able to pull this up in a second and show you some of the things that I've built. But the other thing that you'll want to do before you actually launch it, so once you've made it, is just come in here and generate Visual Studio project files. Hopefully we don't run into any issues with that. I don't know what it's getting hung up on. Okay, whatever. It's done. So now we can actually launch the project. And it should launch fairly quickly because there's nothing in there right now. You will need a decent amount of space for running Unreal Engine. If you can put it on your main or a solid state drive, that would be ideal because the engine itself is obviously, you don't want to be slow while you're running that. So the interface, this is going to be your main building interface, which is nice because you can drag and drop your actors. And then once you have your template set up, then you'll basically be working in the world that you'll be building. Content drawer is going to hold all of the things. So things like your mannequin. Let me see. I guess I can go into where my. Does it have any blueprints in here? Okay, I'll show you the top-down blueprints in a second, but I'll show you how to add that, which is just you'll go into add feature or content pack, because again we started with a blank project, and then you'll just add in the top-down. You'll hit add to project. It might yell at me because I've already added it. Okay, it didn't, but whatever. Um, there's no like confirm or anything, which is a little weird. So looking into the top-down blueprints, we can drag this guy into the world, and then you'll see this is, so the camera that's actually attached to him is like top-down style. So while you can see him in the viewport, you can also see that this is what you see as the player working with him. There are a lot of nice things that they build into the templates for you. So I can go into, I can either edit this guy's blueprint or edit the master blueprint. I'd suggest avoiding doing this because you might accidentally make blueprints to this is the specific one that I've dragged into this world, whereas this is the overarching class. So there's nothing that it's showing you in the event graph right now, which is a little weird. There should be some things in here. I won't worry about that too much. But anyways, you can see what this guy looks like. It's just the Unreal Engine 4 mannequin with like a, looks like an Iron Man-y type skin or Ultron type skin attached to it. And then in here is where you do your scripting. So I might say like begin play on the event that is beginning of play. We just print something, print a string. Yes, this is working. Now, strings like this or prints like this are only going to show in development, so in debug. So it should work if I just come in here and do play. It should pop a little, yes, this is working up in the top. Then I can also come back in here and say event tick. Where's my, what's tick in this one? Yeah. So tick is going to be, you can set the number of seconds or it'll just be, I want to say it's 100 milliseconds. But I can print hello a bunch of times, or I can say, okay, I want to, what's something that's going to be a little bit more interesting? Oh, I could do like a lapsed time. So I could create a variable. Let's create a variable that's time. Make it a float. Drag time in here. We'll get time, and then we'll also set time. And I'm going to say, let's do time plus, we'll just call it 1. It's not actually going to be 1, but, alright, no, we can just put in the delta. Set time. Let's actually just get rid of the hello print. We'll print the time. So then we're going to print time. Let's see if this just works as is. Save this. And then run it. So it'll say, see the time is ticking up here. So yeah, it does look like it's 100 milliseconds. Anyways, that's not stuff that you're really going to need to do. I mean, you'll be grabbing and using time for various things, but this is just an example of how the scripting works, right? This is all code, but it's not me coding. It's the blocks of code that are doing everything. I'm going to delete these so that if I ever come back to this, it's not going to confuse me. I think, was there anything else that I wanted to show? I think I can close this project for now. And I'll go into just really quickly. We'll see if this boots. If it doesn't, then I can pull it up and talk you through it another time. Oh, it looks like it's going to behave. So this is the simulation that I built for my dissertation. And it should allow me, so this is called the FIRE Framework for Immersive Reality Experimentation. I've got a few experiments that I've built into here. I'm going to ignore the project settings problem right now. This is my tracking information and setting my experiment variables. I'm going to do the complex environment. We'll start with the spatial exposures and then beginning the experiment. The equivalent of this for a game is just going to be the main menu, right? See what happens. It might boot, it might not. Nothing should have changed drastically. I'm going to have to give it a second. You'll see in the top corner, I can In the top corner here, it's building my shaders. So it's got about 100 left of those, or textures, and then shaders as well. It's going to yell at me about lighting need to be rebuilt. This wouldn't be seen if I were running this for the participants, because this is just the development mode. All that I did was tilt into that. So you can see that the environment is loaded. I put some pictures on the walls so that they would know which walls they were looking at. These are the objects that they're going to and finding. They highlight when you approach them. That was just another texture loading. And then their job is to learn the space. So right now I'm learning how to get from the red cube to the blue sphere. So you can see I'm in a first-person view. I didn't create a body. There's no body. And I don't have head bob or anything. All of that's turned off. What I did here was just take the first person template and make a set of changes. This will probably also disappear, and then we'll give it a second, and then okay, highlighted texture is working now. When I click on it, then it's going to pop up a UI. I can interact with that UI and then move on to the next exposure, which is going to take me from the green cone to the red cube. Taking a peek at what some of these things are. So you can see I've got a folder for my main menu. I've got folders for some of the things that I've pulled from the templates. This was, again, just import. Oh, no, not importing. Adding the feature content pack and bringing in the first person. But I did do a lot of things, changing it from that. These are my different experiment folders. So the way that I set everything up, I typically start from a main menu. Actually, let me show you the menu script, and then I'll show you one of the controllers as well. So my menu pawn, and you'll learn about the differences between pawns and characters. All that my pawn is doing is allowing me to interact with the main menu, so it creates the widget that's the main menu. The main menu widget actually handles pretty much everything from there. I'll pull that up as well because we'll look at that in a second. Sets that it should be controlled by the player controller, player controller, player controller. It seems silly that you have to specify it, but you do. Adds it to the viewport so I see it on the camera, and then shows the mouse cursor. So right, this is I'm technically a character here to which a UI is being displayed, and then I'm allowed to interact with the UI because I set the input mode to the UI only. The UI that I'm interacting with is actually controlling everything. So these are different buttons that I've got set up. And then if I look at the control graph, this is where things get more interesting with the visual blueprinting. So the experiment in general, this is just a widget switcher that lets me select which menu I'm looking at. And then if I go over to the experiment that I was just showing you, the mental maps and wayfinding, then when I click on this button, then it does a thing. When I click on this button, then it sets the participant ID. That's me typing in test, for example. I can set the exposures, and that has a flow that sets, okay, set into the game instance. I mean, all of this stuff you'll learn what each of these things are doing. But this is just a pretty simple flow diagram, right? This happens, and then I want it to set a setting, and then I want to have that setting go to my game instance so that I can track it through the whole play. And then once I'm finally done and I click OK, begin experiment, zoom, 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 it's going to eventually load a level. So load a level by level name, the practice environment, or some of the different exposures depending on what it is that I've told it in the menu to load. Now the way that I actually do all of my levels is I have everything controlled by sort of a God controller. So going back into my folder, that's this controllers. So this isn't like a gamepad Xbox controller. This is the controllers that I set up that handle, this guy handles all of the data, and this guy handles the flow of the trial. So when I look at my trial controller, we'll see that I'm using again that begin play that I used in the example. Talking to my game instance, so you can think of this as sort of like your game save. If I needed to save anything, I'd be talking to the game instance. Okay, what's the current status? And then I'm setting those variables. Then I'm creating my data controller, starting the first sequence. So in this case, spawning me into the blue sphere, popping up the UI for what I need to do, popping up the walls that are defining the routes through the environment. And then I have various things for receiving input. So these are interfaces. You see I've got it's a visual spatial working memory interface. So this is a tool that lets you have things talk to each other. So my controller can talk to anything that it knows, and it knows everything because it creates everything. Um, let's see, let's see. Yeah, I won't go into the details of what each of these are doing, but I will show you just a little bit of how things can get complex. These are just different functions, quote functions, that I've written. All right, so this is starting the visual search trial. It spawns a character for the player, the participant to control, or me to control in this case. Sets various parameters for controlling that, and then allows them to set how they're interacting. Let me pull up a little bit more of an interesting. This isn't actually the most interesting. Um, Oh, because that's visual spatial wayfinding. That's not the same experiment. I was looking at mental maps and wayfinding. I was like, this pretty sure this should be more complicated. So there's my data controller, trial controller, environment B, trial controller, environment C. Let's do trial controller environment B. That's the one that I just loaded into. So you'll see that this guy's notably more complex. This is my begin play. I have it getting and setting experimental parameters, creating that data controller, and then setting up the environment. So spawning the landmarks, spawning the player character, starting the experimental exposures. Then I also have things going on down here. So when the player does something, right, the controller recognizes that it's receiving a player interaction. It's going to depend on what landmark it's interacting with and what the interaction message is, what ends up flowing out from there. So you can see this flow comes up if it's landmark 0, 1, or what, depending on the exposure, right? If it's the first, second, or third, right? Because this is 0, 1, 2 exposure, then it's going to check, okay, which landmark are we interacting with, and then we'll enter a transition phase. So this is a function that's setting for the trial controller what happens next, and then we'll come back. Oh, never mind. We don't want to. We can look at the interface quickly. So this is the interface that handles the communications. So this is actually the trial controller speaking to the player actor, and the way that it quote speaks or sends a message is through the interface. So in this case, the message that I'm sending is enter transition. So if I look at what I'm sending when I do the enter transition. Wait, am I wrong? Is it not a trial control message? Enter transition. Trial control. Enter transition. Where the hell is enter transition? Send data interaction. Player interaction. Initialize. Oh, no, it's a trial. Yeah, trial control. And then, there we go. Yeah, so the trial control and then what kind of message is the enter transition. When the player character receives that, I'll pull up the player character actually. Actors. Wait, actor. Is it you? Are you the player character? Yeah, sure. So it receives what's the message that I'm getting. The message is, let me check what it was again. Enter transition. Enter transition. So I want to follow that line. If I get the enter transition interface, then it's going to pop up this enter transition UI. So anyways, all of this can be done with visual. This character is also handling input. So this is gamepad input. If it overlaps with an object, that's how I'm getting things to highlight. I don't think there's any point in really walking through each of these. I just wanted to give you a little insight into what the visual scripting actually looks like. So I'm going to end this here because otherwise it's going to get even more overwhelming, and I'm not good at making tutorials. It's not really what I do. But there's lots of things that will show you how to do each of these things. And then obviously I'm happy to answer questions as well.